Hi there, I'm Eric Siegel with ericstrains.com. Alright, today we're going to take a look at a great new set. This is the 3-rail O-scale Pennsy M1a coal hauler set from Lionel. Alright, so here we have a great new O-scale set from Lionel that consists of a Pennsy M1a steam engine, 4 coal hoppers, and a caboose. But before we start talking about Lionel's rendition of the M1a and this set, let's go over a little bit of history on the real Class M1 steam engines. The M1 was a class of mixed-use steam locomotives used by the Pennsylvania Railroad. They had a 4-8-2 mountain-type wheel arrangement, which meant there were 4 wheels on the lead truck, 8 drive wheels in the middle, and then 2 wheels on the trailing truck. Now, something that I learned about the Pennsy while I was reading up on the history of the M1 is that the Pennsy would typically put the nice keystone number plate on the front of engines that were meant to be used for passenger service only. And then on freight service engines, they would put the less fancy circular number plate. So, because the M1 here has a keystone number plate on the front, you would think that it was a passenger service engine, but the M1 actually carried freight for most of its service life. The reason it has the keystone number plate is because originally the M1s were meant to be used for mixed service, both passenger and freight service, and so they were given the keystone number plates, and actually some of them had gold leaf striping to make them really nice for passenger trains, but in fact they ended up hauling freight for most of their service life. A total of 301 M1s were ordered between 1923 and 1930. The first M1 prototype was built at the Pensy's Altoona Works in 1923, and then after receiving favorable reviews, a batch of 200 M1s were ordered from outside builders. 175 came from Baldwin, 25 came from Lima, and these engines were numbered 6800 through 6999. In 1930, another 100 M1s were ordered. This last batch of 100 were known as Class M1a, which is what we've got here, because they had several improvements over the original M1s, among which were improved castings and the installation of Worthington feed water heaters, and also they had larger tenders than the original M1s. Later on, 38 of the M1As were converted to M1Bs, which had boiler improvements that resulted in more tractive effort than both the original M1s and the M1As. In the twilight years of steam, as dieselization took effect, the M1s began to be assigned heavier trains, while the diesels took over the high-speed freight trains. The last years of the M1 service had them hauling heavier trains than they had ever hauled before. Many of the M1s remained in service until the very end of steam service on the Pennsy in 1957. There is a single M1 that survives today, M1B number 6755, which is actually this engine right here. Now, as modeled, this is an M1A, but eventually it was converted to an M1B, and it is currently on display at the Railroad Museum of Pennsylvania in Strasburg, PA. Additionally, 6755 was added to the National Register of Historic Places in 1979, so it's actually a landmark, so to speak. Okay, now let's turn our attention to Lionel's rendition of the M1A and the coal hauler set. This set was offered in Lionel's 2014 Volume 1 catalog, but we had to wait a while for it to ship. It was finally delivered in December of 2015, right around Christmas, but I gotta say it was worth the wait. This is a fantastic set, and I don't use that word lightly because, as many of you know, I buy a lot of high-end Lionel sets, so I've got a pretty good feeling for when they're hitting it on the mark and when they're not. I've never bought a bad Lionel set, let me say that, but sometimes you get a set that's okay, sometimes you get one that's great, and then sometimes you get one that's outstanding, and that's what this set is, outstanding. Lionel really hit it out of the park with this set, in my opinion. It's a home run from beginning to end. You get a great engine with great sounds and great features, but then you also get 5 excellent pieces of rolling stock, and they're all new toolings. The new coal hoppers are fantastic, as you'll see later, And the new Caboose is awesome. It's one of the best Lionel cabooses I've ever owned. So if you're a fan of the Pennsy and you want to haul some coal around your layout, I would definitely recommend picking up one of these sets. You won't regret it. So what I'm going to do is start things off with some stats and facts on the engine, the hoppers, and the caboose. Then we'll go in for a closer look at some of the details and features on this great set. And then we'll wrap things up by taking this set for a spin around the layout. Alright, let's go over some stats on the engine. The length of the engine itself is right at 14 inches. The length of the tender is just over 13 inches, and when they're coupled together, the combined length is right at 27.5 inches. The weight of the engine is 7 pounds, the weight of the tender is 4 pounds 14 ounces, and that gives us a combined weight of 11 pounds 14 ounces. This engine has really good pulling power, 3 pounds 10 ounces, and the minimum required curve needed to operate this engine is 0.54. Now, I wanted to test that, but I don't have any 0.54 track on my layout. I do have 0.63, and it ran just fine on 0.63, so I would imagine it would run fine on 0.54 as well. On the inside, this engine is powered by one large flywheel motor. There are two fan-driven smoke units inside the engine, one for the smokestack and one for the whistle steam smoke effect. And then back in the tender are the electronics for legacy command and legacy rail sounds. As usual, there are 3 ways to operate this engine. The preferred method is to use Lionel's legacy command system, as that will give you access to all of the engine's advanced features. However, you can also run the engine using Lionel's classic TMCC command system, or you can run the engine conventionally with just a transformer and some track. As we go in for a closer look at this set, here on the front of the engine we've got the pilot area, and as you can see it looks fantastic. We've got some nice steps down here with safety tread on them. There's some nice grill work underneath here. We've got a separately applied metal coupler cut bar that does move, like that. And it's got a chain on it that goes down into a dummy scale coupler. And if you want to double head the engine, you can swap the dummy scale coupler out for dummy O-gauge coupler, which is also packaged with the engine when you buy it. And then up here we've got these great looking operating marker lights. I love how these Pennsy steam engines have these extra lights down here. Looks awesome. Moving up, we've got an air tank with little grab irons and safety tread on top. And then we've got this great looking smoke box front. We've got the iconic Keystone logo in the middle. There are steps on either side. We've got a curved metal grab iron going around the top. There's an operating headlight up here with lighted number boards on either side. And of course, the front of the boiler swings open like that. There's a whole lot to see as we look down the side of the engine. Starting with the underside, we've got some nicely detailed cylinders up front. Then we've got all of this great looking drive gear connected to the drive wheels, and it looks fantastic when the engine is in motion, which you'll see in just a few minutes. Then we've got all of this wonderful add-on piping and so forth. It runs down the entire length of the boiler. Toward the back, we've got a nicely detailed firebox, and this engine does come with the variable ash pan glow effect. So as the engine's running, there's a red glow in the ash pan, and that glow gets more intense the faster the engine goes. Underneath, we've got a nicely detailed trailing truck, and then we've got some add-on details under the cab. As we go topside, we've got these great looking green classification lights on either side. And then we've got a separately applied metal grab iron right here. There's also a metal handrail that runs down the entire length of the boiler. There's a nice legible builder's plate on either side of the engine. And then down the entire length of the boiler, we've got some nice cast-in details that look fantastic. Here's a look at the cab. We've got some nice rivet detail going on, and then a very crisp 6755 right here in the middle. There are clear plastic inserts in the windows. On the inside of the cab, there are 2 hand-painted crew figures. The back head is very nicely detailed with a number of hand-painted valves and gauges. There is a red glow in the firebox when the engine is in operation. And of course, there's an interior light in the cab, which does shut off when the engine is in motion. Here's a look at the gap between the engine and the tender. It's pretty good. My only complaint is that there's no drop plate between the engine and the tender. Here's a look at the other side of the engine. We've got some nice add-on pieces here on the underside, and then we've got some nice additional piping detailing by the smoke box. Up on top of the engine, we've got these nice grab irons coming up from the sides. They look great. And then we've got a nice add-on dynamo generator. There's a smokestack, and like I said earlier, there's a fan-driven smoke unit down in there. And to load smoke fluid into the smoke unit, you simply pour the smoke fluid directly down the stack. Behind the smokestack, we've got the feed water heater, and as I said earlier, this is one of the things that distinguishes the M1A from the M1. Then we've got this little brass bell here, and then we've got the sand dome. Moving back, we've got the steam dome, and there's a nice hand-painted whistle coming off of it. And then right under the whistle is the hole for the whistle steam smoke effect. And in case you don't know what that's all about, when you blow the whistle on this engine, it shoots smoke out of this hole, and it gives the illusion of steam shooting out of the whistle. It looks really cool, and you'll see it in action in just a few minutes. We've got some nice add-on piping coming off of the steam dome and going all the way back to the cab. There's this deflector plate here, which I believe is for the whistle. It looks really cool. Then we've got some hand-painted pop-off valves back here, and you can also see the start of the famous square-shouldered bell pair firebox that the Pennsy used on so many of their steam engines. Then as we get back toward the cab, we've got some nice details on top of the firebox and a nicely detailed cab roof. There's a vent on top of the roof, but unfortunately it does not open. Here's a look at the back of the engine. At the bottom, we've got the drawbar, and sitting on top is the infrared sensor that allows the electronics in the engine to communicate with the electronics in the tender. Up by the cab, we've got some nice separately applied grab irons on either side. There's some nice cast-in detailing on this side. I like that. And then if I grab my little Reachy light tool, you can see the detailed back head, and you can see some of the hand-painted valves right there. It looks great. Here's a look at the underside of the engine. We've got 3 pickup rollers here in the middle. There are traction tires on the last set of drivers. And then underneath the cab, we've got the control switches for the engine. On this side, we've got the smoke unit on-off switch. And then over here, we've got the run program switch and the Odyssey speed control switch. All right, that takes care of the engine. Now let's check out the tender, and what a tender it is. You know, the size of the tenders on the M1s increased steadily over its lifetime, and by the end of the service run for the M1s, the tenders were often almost as big as the engines themselves. And I like that. This is a big, giant tender, and it certainly does not play second fiddle to the engine at all. So, starting at the bottom, we've got these nice 6-wheel die-cast metal trucks. They look great. Then on the sides, we've got all this great rivet detailing, and of course that nice crisp Pennsylvania logo. On the front, we've got some cast-in steps on either side and some separately applied grab irons. And then in the middle, we've got some nice cast-in detailing, including a little pile of coal that's coming out. And then down here, we've got the receiving end for the drawbar and the second infrared sensor that allows the electronics in the engine and the tender to communicate with each other. Here we have the back of the tender. Again, we've got some cast-in steps down here on either side, a separately applied coupler cut bar, some separately applied metal grab irons on either side, and a nice add-on ladder. We've got some legible placards on the back, and then down here in the middle is the electrocoupler that can be fired from the Legacy or TMCC remote. Moving up, we've got a couple of operating marker lights on the corners and an operating backup light here in the middle. And then we've got the famous doghouse that the Pennsy had on so many of their steam engines. And for those of you who don't know what the doghouse is all about, it's a shelter for the brakeman. So if it's raining or cold or snowing or something, he can sit in there when he's not running up on top of the train. Now, there is a light inside there, but there is no crew figure. I guess he's busy at work. Moving back behind the doghouse, we've got some nice add-on details here behind the coal, and then this hatch lifts up to reveal the master volume control for the engine. And then up front here, we've got a little pile of real coal. All right, now let's take a look at the rolling stock that's included with the coal hauler set. This is one of the 4 coal hoppers that you get. It's a GLA twin hopper. 3 are in a Pennsylvania paint scheme, and then 1 is in a Berwind paint scheme, but they're all the same underneath. This is a brand new tooling for Lionel, so it's a new model, and I gotta say I'm impressed. You know, in my opinion, Lionel has been doing a really good job as of late at putting out nice high-end models, and This is a great coal hopper. This is as good a model of a coal hopper as I've ever seen. So at the bottom, we've got the die-cast metal sprung trucks and couplers that you would expect on a high-end piece of rolling stock. And then up here, we've got nice rivet detailing, and the ribbing is very well done. And the paint job is excellent as well. Card data and the logo, everything's perfect. Now, for those of you who have been collecting and operating Lionel trains for a long time, you may notice that something is missing from the side of this car. What's missing is the Built by Lionel stamp that they've been putting on their rolling stock pretty much since the post-war period. Now, it's not gone. What they've done is they've moved it to the underside of the car, which I think was a brilliant idea because you've got this nice prototypical looking car with all this wonderful car data on it, and then you have that Lionel stamp, which completely breaks the illusion. That's okay on an 027 train where it's supposed to be more toy-like, but on a high-end scale model like this, we expect more. And so I think it was a great idea to do that. They started doing it a couple years ago. The first time I noticed it was when I reviewed the Conrail Big Blue set a while back. And again, I think it's a wonderful idea. It's just one of the many things that Lionel has been doing lately to up the ante on their high-end models. They've moved that stamp to the underside of the car. They've got the scale coupler mounting pads on these cars now, which you'll see in just a minute. And another example is on the passenger cars. The new 21-inch passenger cars have LED lighting, and they are outstanding. I can't wait to do a review on the New York Central Empire Express set, so keep an eye out for that. But they're just doing so many things lately to really, like I said, up the ante on their high-end models, and that really deserves recognition. The ends of these cars are my favorite part because you've got all of this wonderful fine detailing, the ladders, the steps, the coupler cut bar, the brake wheel, the stem winder rod, the platform. There's some equipment back in here. It just looks awesome. Here's the other side, and it's the same story over here, all of this wonderful fine add-on detailing. On the top of these cars, the coal load lifts out like that. And that reveals a fairly well-detailed interior. We've got these cross braces going on, and there's lots of nice rivet detailing. On the underside of these cars, there's that Made by Lionel stamp right there that's now moved to the underside of the car. We've got opening hatches. There's one. There's the other one. And then underneath the couplers, you can't really see it very well, but there are scale coupler mounting pads on each side, which is very nice. Oh, and by the way, for those of you who don't understand what I mean by scale coupler mounting pads, if you want to ditch these big unrealistic O-gauge couplers and go with scale couplers like KD couplers, that's where those mounting pads come into place. You can remove this coupler and then install a KD coupler using the mounting pads. So, like I said earlier, 3 of the 4 hoppers are in the Pennsylvania paint scheme that you just saw, and then the last one is in this Berwyn paint scheme. It's exactly the same as the hopper you just saw, it's just a different paint scheme. Alright, so now we come to the last piece of rolling stock in the set, which is also my favorite, and that's this beautiful brand new N5B Caboose. So, as I mentioned earlier, this is really one of the best Lionel cabooses I've ever seen or owned. It's absolutely fantastic. Not only is it wonderfully detailed both inside and out, but it's got a great weight to it, and that's because the trucks and couplers are die-cast metal, the frame is metal, and the cupola up here is metal, and so as a result, it's got a great weight to it that makes it feel more real. And I've talked about this in many other reviews. The weight of a model affects how real it feels. It doesn't make sense on paper, but when you hold it in your hand and you feel that great weight, it feels like you spent your money on a quality model and it feels more real. And that's the case with this Caboose. It's absolutely fantastic. So let's take a quick look around at the features and the details. So as we come in closer, you can see that the paint job is fantastic and the lettering is first rate, and you can see some of the great rivet detailing that's on the sides of the Caboose. The other side of the Caboose looks exactly the same, except it's got a toolbox right here. As you can see, the ends of the Caboose look great. We've got nice step detail down here, all sorts of separately applied metal grab irons going on. There's a nice brake wheel here, and then In the middle, you probably can't see it too well, but there's a door, and the doors on both ends of the car open up. Here's the other end of the Caboose, which looks exactly the same, except we've got these operating marker lights on each side. Here's a look at one side of the top of the Caboose, and you can see we've got the trademark Pennsy radio antenna going on, lots of separately applied grab irons, great decking detail, and the cupola up here looks fantastic. And here's a look at the other end of the top. Again, it looks fantastic. Lots of wonderful detailing up here. This Caboose does come with an operating smoke unit that puts smoke out of the smokestack here. And to load smoke fluid into the smoke unit, you pop the stack off like that and squirt the smoke fluid right down there. Now, if you've ever owned a Lionel Caboose equipped with a smoke unit, then you know that the smoke output is very, very little. All you get is just a tiny little wisp of smoke coming out of the top at best. And that's because you can't put a fan-driven smoke unit in a Caboose like you would in an engine, because that would produce way too much smoke and look completely unrealistic. So instead, what they do is they put a very simple smoke unit in these Cabooses that does not have a fan. And so the result is that the smoke barely makes its way out of the top. It's hardly noticeable at all when the Caboose is standing still, and completely unnoticeable once the Caboose is in motion. The low smoke output in these Cabooses has always annoyed me a little bit. I've always wanted just a little bit more smoke coming out of these stacks. So to that end, I've actually modified the smoke unit setup in this Caboose so that it gets a little more output. It's not so much that it looks silly, it's just a little more smoke coming out so that it's a little more noticeable, especially when the train is in motion, and I think it looks great. So if you buy one of these sets, don't be surprised if your Caboose is putting out less smoke than mine. I've modified mine to put out more smoke. Now, I'm not going to go over that modification right now because it would take too much time, but at a later date I will do a full tutorial video showing how to make that modification, because you can make that modification to any smoke unit equipped Caboose. Finally, here's a look at the underside of the Caboose. We've got 2 pickup rollers, 1 per truck. There's a good amount of add-on detailing down here. They did a great job with it. Right here is the Built by Lionel stamp that is now on the bottom of the car instead of on the side, just like with those coal hoppers. And then we've got 2 control switches. This one turns the smoke unit on and off, and this one turns the interior lights on and off. This Caboose does feature a nicely detailed interior. You can't see it too well with the camera, but there's a crew figure here. There are a couple chairs up in the cupola and some other nice details on the inside. Unfortunately, again, you can't see it too well with the camera, but you'll just have to trust me, and when you get one of these things, you'll appreciate it when you do see it. The inside of the Caboose is also lighted, and just like most of the new stuff Lionel is bringing out right now, it features LED lighting. Okay, the last thing we're going to do before we start this thing up is BFIMO, best feature in my opinion. I'm going to pick 2 items this time around, one for the engine and one for the entire set. Now, for the engine, my favorite feature is the whistle, because not only does it have the whistle steam smoke effect, which is great, but the sound of the whistle is outstanding. It's one of the best whistles I've ever heard. Now, I don't know if it's prototypical or not, but frankly, I don't care because it's fantastic. I love running this set just to hear that whistle. And then for the entire set, I'm going to pick the rolling stock, all of the rolling stock, because every piece of rolling stock in this set represents new tooling, which is something you don't see that often. Many times a set will contain rolling stock that the manufacturer is trying to get rid of. Not all the time, but sometimes. But here we've got 5 pieces of brand new rolling stock that all represent new tooling. The new coal hoppers are fantastic, the detailing is wonderful, and the Caboose is awesome as well. So hats off to Lionel for putting such great pieces of rolling stock with this set. It makes the entire set a winner. Alright, now comes the fun part. Let's go ahead and power it up.
This is the dispatcher. Do you copy? Roger that. I read you. Over. Very good. Start up and hold. Roger that. Out.
Okay, first up, let's hear the whistle. And like I said before, this is a fantastic sounding whistle, so check it out. And now let's check out the bell. Here's the sound of water being added to the tender. And here's the sound of coal being added to the tender.
The coal's full. Over. Copy that. Out.
Here's the steam blowdown sound. And lastly, here's a sampling of some of the Crew Talk sound effects.
Dispatcher here. Stand by. Over. Understood. Out. Dispatcher here. You're cleared outbound. Over. Thank you. We have a clear signal. Out. Dispatcher arrived and standing by. That was a good run. Over. Roger that. Welcome back. Out. Tower, how's the line up ahead? Am I clear? Over. Yep, you have a clear track. Over. Thank you, sir. Two signals ahead. Out. This is the dispatcher. All clear inbound. Over. Copy that. Pulling in now. Out. This is the dispatcher. Come to a full stop. Over. Copy that. Full stop. Out.
Okay, let's go ahead and move it on out.
Dispatcher, we are underway. Over. Roger that. Have a good run. Out.
right, that about wraps it up for this review. As you've seen, this is a fantastic set all around. It's got a great engine with awesome sounds and awesome features. The coal cars are awesome, and the Caboose is great. So you really can't lose with this set. I love it, and I'm so happy that I bought it. Now, if you're interested in purchasing this set for your own, the retail price on the set is right at $1,800. So it's not cheap, but in my opinion, it's worth it because it's such a great set. And then they also made a couple of expansion packs if you want to add more coal cars. There's a Pennsy 3-pack, and then there's a Berwind 3-pack, and each of those 3-packs has a retail price right at $220. But keep in mind that all of the prices that I just mentioned are retail prices, and if you go through a good Lionel dealer, you should be able to get a little bit of a discount off those retail prices. And as always, if you're looking for a good Lionel dealer, try my favorite train store, which is Legacy Station. You can find them on the web at www.legacystation.com or give them a call at 770-339-7780. Anyway, that's it for now. I'm Eric Siegel, and I'll see you next time. To discuss this model or any other O-Gauge trains and to meet other O-Gauge modelers, check out the O-Gauge Railroading Magazine online forum at ogrforum.ogaugerr.com.